Hey there, everybody. Welcome to my very awkward Facebook Live. It's going to be awkward because she does not want to be with me, apparently. She says she only does Facebook Lives for her 31 bags. So, Heather, tell us a little bit about your 31 bags.
They're great bags. Join me.
She said I wasn't allowed to throw her under the bus, but alas, I threw her under the bus, and so here she is. If you see her glaring at me, I just try to ignore it. But I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to do this with my wife. I've been bugging her for a long time to join me, and she keeps saying no. But she joined me today, and I gave her 20 seconds to complain just before it went on, and so she has to smile like this for the whole time. That was the deal. So I'm happy that she joined me. As we talk about some of the cool things that God has done in our lives. And today we're going to be doing that a little bit, talking about some of the cool things we've done in our lives, or God has done it for us. She says that I have to do all the talking. So this is not me talking over her. She doesn't want to talk. She'll just remind me when she sees people pop on. So hi, Kathy. Kathy and Sheldon. Great that you guys are watching. We're super pumped to get a couple people on board here. And we're going to give it about 30 more seconds. And then we are going to get started here. We got Paul on there. I don't know if that's Charlene as well or if it's just Paul. But hey there, Paul. Glad that you could join us. Oh, we got Neilcha Statham. See?
Hi, Neilcha.
See, these people know. Neilcha knows that Heather does Facebook Lives. But you missed this, Neilcha. She doesn't want to do it with me. That's the problem.
He's cramping my style.
But I'm loving doing it with her because she literally just got here from the patio. So she smells like deep fried stuff. And that's the greatest perfume ever. It's wonderful. Oh, we got Charlene there too. We got Nita Penner there. Okay, well, why don't we get started? The reason I got Heather to join me is because I was at home the other day and I said, Heather, what can we share? What's a good thing to do on Facebook Live? What's something really awesome that God has done for us? I wanted to talk a little bit about how God answers prayers, and I've talked about this before, but I want to share because there's so many stories, and then I drew a blank. And we were sitting there. I think Heather was were you homeschooling at the time? She was about to pull her hair out, and so I said, man, what's some of the incredible ways that God has answered our prayers? And she kind of rolled her eyes at me. She does it every now and again, not very often. See, like that. And she just looked at our children who were driving her nuts. And she just went, did you forget them? And so as much as the kids drive us nuts, especially her when she has to homeschool, because I don't do as much homeschooling as she does, as much as they drive us nuts, I want to share today, actually, I'll see how much time we have. It'll be one, maybe both stories of our incredible, wonderful, amazing kids, and how God led them into our lives through like a dozen answered prayers. And so our story actually starts when we were youth pastoring in Brandon. And so we're youth pastoring in Brandon, and yes, it starts in Brandon, right?
Yeah, we were youth pastoring in Killarney.
Sorry. We were youth pastoring in Killarney. That's why she's here, to keep the facts straight. And so we're youth pastoring in Killarney, and we're working with Child and Family Services out of Brandon. And we want to adopt. We're having a hard time conceiving. The doctor says it's probably not going to happen. We're going to have to adopt. And we get into the process. And it's a long process, and it was a struggle. I remember one time we actually got a phone call that said, it's time to come in. It was a girl who just had a baby. Well, obviously a girl who had a baby, but it's a girl who just had a baby. Baby was going to go for adoption. I think, Heather, did you get all the way out there once to hold the...
No, I'd been there 3 times already.
There we go. She'd been there 3 times already to hold this newborn because she wanted, the newborn to attach, kind of to link Heather with motherhood. And so Heather got out 3 times already to hold this baby. And I'm very confused about the facts. I'm going to let her talk just a little bit here, even though she didn't want to. So walk me through this again.
Yeah, so pretty much what happened was they'd had me in 3 times over the weekend to bond with the baby and to hold the baby for several hours at a time. Mom had 0 interest in the baby at all, hadn't held her, had signed away her rights and everything. And then I was on my way in for the 4th time. They were going to discharge the baby to us into foster care and then work on the adoption placement after that. And because we were already licensed foster parents at that time. And As I stopped at McDonald's to get a drink, and I was waiting in the line there, and my phone rang, and it was them saying that Mom had changed her mind. She'd taken the baby and left that morning. So that was super hard.
Yeah, so I remember we'd been working so hard. We'd been wanting so much to have a child. And yeah, Heather goes in and it was like, this is it. All of your prayers have been answered. God is doing exactly what you've prayed for, and you're going to get this incredible little baby. And Heather's gone in, like she said, 3 times. She's on the 4th time, possibly to pick up the baby. And all of a sudden, everything just falls apart. And it just absolutely was devastating. We're like, God, we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. How come this is happening to us? This was our baby. It was the 4th time. Like, the mother had totally given up. And so we were just devastated. And so they said, don't worry. They said, you're actually right close to the top of the list to adopt. And it's all going to be good. And it was right around that time that all of a sudden, God really started calling us that we were supposed to go to Africa. And we knew that even though the Child and Family said it was going to be less than 6 months probably before we had a child, we'd have to stay home for a year after that. So now it was 18 months. And so when God called us to go to Africa, we had this huge decision to make. And we said, you know what? We're going to take our names off the adoption list. It was heartbreaking. It was devastating. We did a bunch of research about Mozambique, and they're like, it's almost impossible to adopt in Mozambique. And God calls us over to Mozambique, and we're like, are we going to have to give up our dream of having a family? And it was devastating, and but we did it. We knew this is what God wanted. We pack up, and we get all the way out to Mozambique. So we get to Mozambique. Hi there, everybody. I like to check everybody. Tammy's in there. We got Kayla in there. Thanks for joining us. And so we're there, and we get to Mozambique, and there's orphans and there's kids everywhere. Heather's working with an orphan program, but none of the kids would actually meet the requirements of Mozambique for adoption. And we remember one time we finally get this little baby. It's a crazy story. Basically, what happens is we're looking around and we can't find anybody who meets this strict requirement to even consider adoption in Mozambique. We talked to this baby, this, what would you call it, a baby feeding program? That's not what you'd call it?
Where?
To get Tendai. Where she came from?
No, it was an orphanage.
So it was an orphanage, but their primary goal was to feed children and then get them back to parents later on. I think it was at 2 years old.
Members.
Yeah. And we said, do you have anybody who was adoptable? Actually, it wasn't us. It was our friends from Mercier who passed the news on to them. Just friends of ours said, hey, we have some friends who want to adopt. And the lady said, sorry, there's nobody who meets that requirement here. And we'll kind of speed the story up a bit. We went to South Africa for something, and we get a call while we're in South Africa that says, there's a little girl here. She's ready to be adopted, or at least to be brought to a home. Time out. That's why she's here.
Okay, so before we went to South Africa, how do you not remember this stuff? Okay, so actually what happened was, the real true story is our friends from Mercier asked for us, and they said no, but message them in a couple of months and give them your info. So I did that, messaged them, and the lady messaged me back and said, no, there's no babies here that meet that criteria. All of them have an auntie or an uncle or someone who can look after them, so they can't be adopted. So we said, okay, no problem. Thanks for checking for us. If something comes up, let us know. So 7 days later, I got an email back from her that said, you're never going to believe this. After I sent that email, exactly 7 days ago, a granny showed up on the doorsteps of the orphanage with a little baby girl. She's the only living family member. Her mom and dad have both passed away. The granny is already being taken care of by the community. She's already like 86 or 84. And, yeah, you don't remember. And so they said, do you want us to pursue paperwork for her to see if she's available for adoption? And I said, absolutely, go for it. And we did this like sight unseen, never seen Tendai. We had no picture, no nothing. We just said, go for it and see if you can get paperwork. So they did. They went and got a whole bunch of paperwork, and they emailed us and said, okay, it looks like she's going to be available. We'll let you know when all of her paperwork is through. And at that time, our friends from Mercier had flown up there to see, to work at the YWAM base there. And they had just popped into the orphanage to say hi. And we actually have a picture of our friend Barbara with Tendai. She was the first one of any of us to see Tendai. And I have a picture of her and Tendai together. And that was the first time we'd ever seen her face. So it had been months. of them like working towards getting her paperwork before we even saw her face. And then it was about 2 weeks later, we were in South Africa, and we had planned to go away for the weekend on yet another one of our famous just gonna take a break trips, which never worked out for us ever. And we had just booked at a really cute little lodge that had given us a great rate because it was a last minute booking, and we were gonna go for 4 or 5 days, and we got a phone call from the orphanage saying, hey, she's ready to go, she's coming next week. And we had zero baby stuff.
Yeah, so I'm gonna speed this up a little bit here. We get all the stuff. Now we quickly do all of our shopping. We get all the way home, and then we get told, okay, so this is all legal. This is all done the right way. And but it was really weird because we talked to the social service and they said, well, just make a plan to figure out how you're gonna meet. And so the orphanage gave Tendai to a pastor who jumped on the back of I don't know if it was a log.
It was in the cab.
It was in the cab. Well, that's what I mean. He jumped in a cab of a logging truck, I think maybe it was, or a sugarcane vehicle.
Yeah, something like that.
A big rig. He jumped into a big rig, and they come down, and we're waiting for 4 hours at the only major intersection in Mozambique. There's a major highway this way, major highway this way. I think it was an 8-hour trip for him at least. And we meet him. We're just sitting there waiting. Like, we don't even know what we're waiting for. We're like pacing around like, is there going to be some guy with a baby? And
we didn't know what truck. We didn't know what this guy looked like.
4 hours we're waiting. We were just totally like, is the baby going to make it? You know, like make it here. And finally we meet he comes and we get Tendai home. And this wasn't even what I was going to talk about the story, but we got to that point. We get Tendai and she's 7 months old. She's 7 months old and she is only 5 pounds. She's only 5 pounds. She's got double lung pneumonia. I just found the x-ray the other day at our house. And I'm seeing all these, COVID x-rays where it's just all white, I think. And it basically looks like that. Like the worst pneumonia you've ever seen. We've got to bring her to the hospital. We're like terrified she's not going to make it. We don't know her kind of medical condition, her status. We didn't know. We knew her mom passed away from HIV. We weren't sure how that would work. And there's a ton of miracles and a ton of incredible stories that I just don't have time to get into because I try and keep these down to about 20 minutes. But it was incredible. We didn't even know. It took another year almost before we could get her tested for HIV, and it was crazy. So we've got this little girl at our house, and we're telling the world this is going to be our baby. We're going to adopt this precious little thing, and she starts gaining weight pretty quickly, and it was absolutely amazing. And then all of a sudden things start stalling. We get a message from not an ambassador, but somebody who works at the embassy, right? Somebody who works at the U.S. Embassy. I don't know how, Heather will remember this. I don't know how they got our contact, but they basically contact us from the U.S. Embassy in the capital city, and they're like, you're wasting your time. We've been here for, I think it was 5 or 6 years. They're only supposed to be there for 3 years at a time, but they're like, we've extended our stay here. We've been desperate to adopt this little child that we have, and the government has rejected us at every course, and we work for the United States government. It makes no sense at all. And we're like, well, you know what? We're going to keep trying. We did a bit of research in our province. In Mozambique, it's the judges who just decide. It's the provinces who make a lot of these decisions. And so
there's like a paragraph in the entirety of the legal code that deals with adoption.
So basically, we get through this and we find out that nobody's been able to adopt for like 10 years. We've got a friend who's trying to adopt, and like it's just everything is just going crazy. And like every turn we take, we're getting shut down. We're getting told this is never, ever, ever going to work. And absolutely nuts. And so finally, I think it's Heather will correct me if I'm wrong. She'll remember. We finally get our court date. And we're like, yes, this is taking almost a year at this point, I think. Finally get this court date, and we're excited. God is finally answering our prayers. We're like, yes, God's going to answer our prayers. And like 2 weeks or something before we're supposed to get this court date, like really close, then all of a sudden we find out it's been postponed. And we're like, well, to when? And they're like, well, I think they postponed it for 3 months.
Yeah, that wasn't a year, though. That was 6 months in. They postponed it for another 3 months.
Right, so they postponed it. And we're like, God, why are you, like, is God messing with us? Like, what's going on? And of course, we knew God wasn't messing with us. But like every turn in our life, we wanted to start a family. We couldn't. We wanted to adopt in Canada, and it fell through. Then we got called to Africa, and we had to take our name off the list. During this, one of the things I forgot to mention was when we went to adopt, they needed some references from Canada. And this is where the first answer to prayer came in. The social worker, our caseworker for adoption, we sent her a message. We said, we know this is outside of protocol. We know that you probably can't give us a reference because it's not going through an agency. And this lady was so sweet. She said, don't worry about it. I will give it to you as an individual. And she sent the most beautiful, amazing reference for us, right? Was it her who sent it?
Yeah, she sent it, but actually she went from being just a caseworker to being in charge of the whole division. And
there we go.
She sent us as the head of the division, and she actually, in Mozambique, it's a really big deal to have your carimba, which is your stamp. And it's not like a visible stamp, it's the like, how would you describe it? Like the embossing or whatever, like where it's like a pressed stamp. So she put the official stamp on it from Manitoba, and that just blew away the...
Oh, so yeah. So now we had a government document. That's right. Now we had a government document that said, look at this. These people are going to be good parents. They've got everything in place. And we were like, wow, that's amazing. And then during this time, while we're trying to get the adoption through, and I'm sure I got the timeline wrong, but the president decides to come visit a town pretty near to us. And there are a couple of things that the president doesn't usually do. First of all, they don't usually just invite some missionaries to come stand in line. It's a very strict protocol for how you get in line. There's like 6 helicopters that do this shell game before they land, and then you stand in line, and it's like vets. They've got
community officials, police officials, and war vets.
Everybody in massive, amazing uniforms, and the community leader. And this is 30 minutes from where we live almost. Community leader contacts us and says, hey, we love what you guys are doing. We want you to meet the president. And we were like, sorry, what? We get to meet the president? And they're like, yes. We're like, oh my word, this is amazing. And so we get in line to meet the president. And of course, we bring Tendai with us. Now, something you have to know about Mozambique is they don't hold babies. It's not a thing. The way, our leaders were like, oh, it's a baby. That is not done. The first thing. The second thing is, Heather at one time in Mozambique got to be the official photographer for the president. But the point being is that you don't get to take pictures of the president unless you go through some very, very strict protocol. It is tough to get good pictures with the president. So here comes the president. He's coming through, and when he gets to us, we're like, he kind of looks and he's like, I'll let you continue.
He looked at us and he was kind of like, whose child is that? Because we had Tendai all dressed up in a pretty pink dress, and we were like, oh, we're adopting her. She's our child. And he's like, oh, how wonderful. Can I hold her? And we were like, yes. And we're looking at all of his officials because he has like a whole team of guys, security guys and official guys. And they're like shaking their heads like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, well, the president just asked. So if he asked, he's going to hold the baby. So I handed the baby and I said, can we take a picture? And all of his official guys like freaked out and were like, no, you cannot take a picture. And the president looked at me and was like, of course you can take a picture. So we have several pictures with us and the president, and also of the president holding Tendai.
So we get these pictures. We get the pictures with the president, which is absolutely unheard of. And finally, we leave and we get all these pictures printed. We staple them all to our applications. Because if you know Mozambican culture, it's been the same party in power for forever. And actually, it has been forever since they've got independence. And, a lot of the leaders you all get appointed by the president. So if the president's on your side, nobody's going to argue, and so we have all these pictures of us with the president. And, so that's the next step. And then finally we get a new meeting with the, only Heather. That's right. And she's just like, can we take a picture, please? And so we get this all said and done. We finally get our meeting with the judge. And now this is where everything was really cool. So in the 3-month period when we were frustrated with why God wasn't answering our prayers, that judge was found to be corrupt and was removed. And like every judge in Mozambique is corrupt, but basically he was removed from position, and a brand new judge, never before sat before an adoption case ever, gets put in charge. He's brand new. He hasn't been kind of corrupted by the system yet. We actually dealt with him years later when he had sort of been corrupted by the system. And we don't have time to get to that today. But basically, God removes a bad judge. God gives us time to get pictures with the president. We finally sit down with this brand new judge, and we were like terrified. We're sitting there. Our Portuguese is still not very good. And these guys are talking, and we're expecting them to ask like a dozen questions to all of them. We have to bring 3 witnesses, and I think they asked 1 question.
They asked 1 question of the witnesses, which we found out later was, do you think these people... no, it was 2 questions. Do you think these people will be good parents, and do you think they will teach them about Mozambique? Like the children, or the child about Mozambique.
Yeah, and so it was... And I think the witness basically said, you see how they treat these kids now? This little girl now, this isn't a show. They always treat her this way, and they're going to keep work. It was just amazing. And then they're like, okay, we're going to deliberate. And we're like, sorry, what? That was like 5 minutes. It was 1 question or 2 questions. So we're all sitting there. We're anxious because remember, for 10 years, judges have rejected every adoption. Government officials are saying, don't even waste your time. And so they go to the back. They're back there for 15 minutes?
15, 20 minutes, yeah.
And they come back. And what was the wording that they used?
They had this like big, it was like 4 pages long, which they obviously had already pretty much made their decision beforehand. They just had to like put their yay or nay on it. But it pretty much was like, you have been, in Portuguese, of course. So like, I can barely understand legal English, let alone legal Portuguese. But the gist of it was, you have now been endowed with all the rights and responsibilities of parents under Mozambican law. And so we were kind of like, we were trying to understand the Portuguese because it was like a lot more complicated sounding in Portuguese. And we were just sitting there like this was our faces. And then our translator, Matthew, looks at us and he's like, and we're like, what? We don't understand. And he's like, that's all he did. And we both burst out crying, and the judge is like, no, you're supposed to be happy. It's a good thing. And I'm like, these are happy tears.
And so, I mean, there's a ton to that story. I mean, it's already 22 minutes in, so we're going to wrap this up here. But I just want to walk you through this one more time real quick. We can't have children. Where's God in all of this? And then we're told that we have a child. Heather just has to go to the hospital and get this baby. And literally as she's getting coffee or something at McDonald's, just outside the hospital, she gets a message saying, it hasn't worked out. Then God says, you got to leave that process that you've worked for 2 years to get done. We get out to Mozambique where everybody says it's not going to work. Then we get a corrupt judge that gets removed from power. Then we get a president who actually holds our baby. Literally, at every turn that we got frustrated with God, God moved the lane to answer our prayers. And I thought it was amazing. And that's a process that took multiple years in our lives of wondering where God was. Actually, in that process, I think you had a miscarriage during that process. And again, it was like, oh, we're going to have a baby. No, we're not going to have a baby. And it was just a devastation. And yet, as we look at God, he just does so many incredible and marvelous, amazing things. And so I just want to encourage you guys. I think we both want to encourage you that even if it feels like God's not answering your prayers right now, maybe it's even like this COVID thing. You're like, when are we going to get things back to normal? And God might be doing something amazing in somebody's life. And we just need to continue to trust in him. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. I don't know if Isaac is listening, but if Isaac's listening, hello. He said I never greet him on live, so he hasn't commented, but hello. Hey, Jerry. And so no matter how things are going wrong in your life, I just want to encourage you guys that God's going to take care of you. God's going to get you through this, and it might take years to understand how all this stuff, crazy stuff comes together, but I've got a dozen stories like that, and we're going to share them another week maybe. Maybe I'll even be able to convince her to join me again.
How We Got Ryan is pretty interesting.
Yes. So maybe the next time we'll talk about How We Got Ryan, but I'm not promising that because she doesn't really like to join me here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And we love you guys. And hopefully you guys are getting through this COVID thing. All right. So, and hey there, Trish. Glad to share. So God bless everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful week and a great evening.
Bye.